He's down near Spanish Florida. The Seminoles are raiding areas. Fugitive slaves are running into Spanish Florida to seek freedom. And, Monroe looks at Jackson and says, go down there and stop that. Now, what Monroe meant, just for the record, what Monroe meant was go down there and stop the raids. Yeah. Go and do that.
Welcome back to The Buck Starts Here, Season 2. It's the podcast that digs deep into the juicy stories, power plays, and wild twists that shape the presidencies of the United States. I am Kyle, the Dionysius to Eric Mason's Plato. Eric Mason is by far one of the smartest economists I think I've ever met. And
that's not a high standard. Smartest economist, prettiest guy in Canada.
Hold on. I've met some economists before. I've met your interns.
Shout out. Love those guys.
I do too. They're awesome. So we are on to Season 2, and I'm affectionately calling this the presidential dead zone.
Yes.
I think officially we're calling it the antebellum era, and that should take us up to, I think, Mr. Lincoln and the Civil War.
Yeah. Okay. Right now, every president we will carry on after this is a Jacksonian for all intents and purposes until we get to Abraham Lincoln. So we have a long stretch of quite similar ideologies and with no real opposition.
This is basically Jackson, then his disciples.
Yeah. There will be occasional Whigs and such thrown in here, but in terms of widespread, consistent opposition, you're not going to find it. You're going to be challenged to find a two-term president after Jackson, because I actually don't believe there was a two-term after Jackson. I got to check that.
I don't think there was until Lincoln, right?
Until Lincoln, yeah.
I think you're right. I think we looked that up, and there was not very many after Lincoln either.
Yeah, there's no good presidents from now until Lincoln. You were not, and I think we'll discuss it, but there's an argument to be where Jackson's place is among the great presidents.
You don't think Harrison belongs up there?
Yeah, right. Actually, Harrison may be my favorite president of this era because he didn't stick around long enough to screw anything up.
There you go. All right. Well, I think we procrastinated long enough. Are you ready to starts the buck here then?
Oh, yeah. Let's do this.
All right. Well, where do you want to start then?
Well, let's start at the beginning. Let's start with Jackson's early life. Actually, let's start with framing this. So we've been joking around for 6 presidents about how difficult it is going to be for Andrew Jackson. And I think it's because Andrew Jackson I think there's few redeeming long-term policy victories of Andrew Jackson. I think if you look at what Andrew Jackson did, what this presidency did over its 8 years of existence, you're going to find that it horribly damaged the United States, and that his disciples perpetually damaged the United States to the point that it caused a civil war.
Hold on, you say? I think instead of disciples, you said his disciples, and I actually loved that mix up.
Disciples?
Disciples?
Yeah, how do you say it?
Disciples.
I went to Catholic school for like that. We always said that could be a New England thing. The founding fathers had this view, and the central issue is the issue of the Civil War, which is slavery. It's not state rights. It's slavery.
JQA was right.
JQA was right. And the founding fathers intentionally took an emancipation style to the slavery question. So we remember you have abolitionists, which are free slaves today. Emancipation is free slaves over time. Mm-hmm. And the United States was relatively on the course of doing that. You saw the slave trade getting banned out west. You saw the slave trade getting banned in the United States by constitutional authority in 1808. You saw even slave owners like Monroe, Jefferson, and Madison being against slavery's expansion out west. Then you get to John Quincy Adams, who is the abolitionist if there's ever been an abolitionist. And then you move on to Jackson. Jackson, who is unapologetically pro-slavery, views it as an important institution, views a lot of his wealth that he generated in his life to be tied to slavery. And you see every successive president after him, up until Lincoln, struggle with this wolf that's been let out of a cage. And it will eventually culminate with things like the Dred Scott decision, with the Fugitive Slave Act, that created an environment where there wasn't this gradual emancipation that I think the founding fathers really wanted. Instead, what Jackson did, and it's important to remember that, they called this the Jackson Party when he got elected. So this wasn't just one man's radical views. This was a collective of men. It was your Jacksons, your Martin Van Burens, your Buchanans. It was this litany of men who truly believed in the institution of slavery and kept it alive. They didn't solely do that gradual emancipation until it became the breaking point, and we have the bloodiest conflict in American history, something that really we define the U.S. as pre-Civil War and post-Civil War. We're starting that journey now, and
Yep.
it's season 2 is going to be that exploration.
You mentioned too the Jacksonian Party. So this is a new party that's starting up around this time? Because what do we have before this? Like the Federalists, and I don't think we had the Whig Party yet, did we?
You start to see what are called sorry, I just wanted to.
Yeah, sorry.
I have like my notes here, and this is the first time I'm doing paper notes.
I just want to get my question out before I forget it.
Yeah. So the Whig Party. So the Whig Party is really, it is a real party. Like that's the thing I want to say. Like there's this idea that the Whig Party is kind of this national Republican Party offshoot. You have the Democrat. So you start with the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. The Democratic Republicans are the party of Jefferson, right?
Mhm.
He was the first Democratic Republican, and you have this era of good feeling where everybody's Democratic Republican. They actually really disagree with each other. There's these anti-Federalists mixed in with Federalists. You have James Madison's kind of the king of that, the guy who wrote the Federalist Papers, combined with also the guy who was in a lot of cases had some anti-federalist leanings
Mhm.
because he wrote the Bill of Rights.
Right.
So as you evolve through those political parties, you get to this. You eventually end up with something called the National Republicans, which are the proto-Whigs. If you want to think of a party that's like, what were the Whigs before the Whigs? You have this party called National Republicans. They're really, I don't want to say they're like the independent party today, where it's a party but not really a party. Like there's not like a national platform. But the National Republicans, they have nothing to do with the Republican Party you see formed in the 1850s and 1860s, right? The National Republicans, you got to understand, back then they viewed it as you were pro-Republican, you were pro-Republic, you were pro-national government, national unity. You also had another party called the Anti-Masonic Party. It's actually what its name was. It was anti-Eric.
Yeah.
People together. They're
There's-
against stonework.
It's the same people that's been thumbs downing all our shorts.
Yes, right. They were anti stoneworking. They just did not like stonework.
My God, are you following you for that too? You had me.
But they were obviously it was the Masons, the Freemasons. They were anti-Freemasons, and so these two groups together, the National Republicans, the Anti-Masonic Party, and actually a huge proponent of the Whigs was just disaffected Democratic Republicans who had seen the Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, John Quincy Adams, and they're like, oh, this is cool. I get this. This is this like kind of centrist, super national focus, make America, really focusing on like creating the American systems. I guess what we would eventually call the American system. They didn't call it that back then. Creating that American system. And then Jackson got elected, and a lot of them were kind of confused as Jackson.
So there was a couple experiments with tariffs that didn't go quite so well during that period.
Whenever
too.
you have abomination in your tariffs, you're probably doing pretty bad. So this evolves into the Whig Party, and the Whig Party, it's popular for about 25, 30 years. It does sound weird now how we've only had two parties since 1860. Kind of the Know Nothings had a little bit of a boom period, but yeah. So as we move forward here, the Whig Party will become the primary opposition to the Jacksonians. So Andrew Jackson's life. So he's born in 1767, March 15th, 1767. He's born in a place called Waxhaw. So his father dies like a few weeks before he's born. His mother Elizabeth's left raising him and his two brothers Hugh and Robert, and they're in this like when we talk about the Western Carolinas right now, like this is this is no man's land. This is the wild wild west in the 1860s, and so they're in this little backcountry area doing like frontier farming. But frontier farming at this time, guys, is like. It's farming on a really small scale, but there's like wild foraging involved. There's hunting involved. So this is not an easy way of life.
Is this kind of like the Daniel Boone lifestyle?
It's right on, Kyle. That's exactly what it is. He gets very little formal schooling. Occasionally, local clergy will give him like sporadic education. But, it's just not anything really formal. And, it's crazy because he eventually becomes an attorney. So he's living this life. It's the 1770s, and the war breaks out. And that kind of puts an end to his regular schooling. And because he doesn't have a dad, so he has to help out the family. His brothers are off trying to support the family too. He develops this reputation of just being like a really tough kid, and growing up a little faster, than probably faster than he wanted to. And that's a real thing we talk about. And Jackson's story,
big recurring theme.
Yeah, and Jackson's story gets really sad. It gets much sadder as we go along with his family. It is bizarre to think about the only president to have a father who didn't die in his youth so far has been
John Quincy Adams.
John Quincy Adams has been the guy whose dad was president. So the Revolutionary War breaks out. Now, it's important to remember the Carolinas at this time aren't, it's not necessarily there's like a bunch of British troops running around because you're in the middle of nowhere, but the South was fairly split into loyalists and Republicans who want a revolutionary. We call them Republicans now, right? But at the time, I guess you would have called them like revolutionaries, right?
Sons of Liberty.
Yeah, the Sons of Liberty are up here. They're up north.
So what are they down south?
Bells of Liberty. Depending
the
if
Bells
you're...
of Liberty.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So Jackson ends up, he's at 13. So he's actually the last person we're going to talk about who served during the American Revolution.
He's born in 1767, you said?
Yeah, he was 13 when he joined the militia in 1780.
So what was he? What did he do? Was he just like a drummer or flag bearer?
No, he was more like an errand boy.
Yeah, okay.
But he had a pretty interesting career. So at 13, he joins the local militia. This militia was traveling all through the backwoods of South Carolina, basically fighting loyalist colonists. It wasn't necessarily going like against redcoats. And this ends up becoming kind of weird. So you end up having like the loyalists are trying to fight these backwood militias. Eventually, the British military is like, oh, this is going to turn into an insurgency real fast. Like, this is like the recipe. Like, if they were, I think the Brits were, and a couple different historians frame this. So, like, anybody wants to comment on here being like, hey, I read something else. Do not discount what you've read. There is mixed reporting on this.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like the Brits were a little concerned about if these militias in the backwoods of the Carolinas fully subdued the loyalists, that you were basically going to have an unsecured frontier. And then what was going to happen? Like, the French are around at this point. The French had joined the war. Like, oh, word. Like, but if we secure that and we support those loyalists that are there, that's a good bulwark against, basically supply chains and, true.
It's a whole another front, basically, that's opening up if you don't secure that. Yeah. Yeah.
So some of the, like, especially military historians who like to write about this time period will say this was a critical area. Who am I to disagree with, like, somebody with a PhD in history? That's not fair. But, so he ends up seeing brutal fighting. And what's, sad is that he suffers another major tragedy, which is in June of 1779, his oldest brother, Hugh, ends up dying of heat exhaustion during the Battle of Stono Ferry. It was kind of like, it wasn't, Jackson never met his dad. Yeah. And so it wasn't necessarily a defining moment it's a defining moment in Jackson's life going forward that his father passed away, but it's not this like emotional attachment, because how do you miss something you never had?
Right.
So Jackson's like deeply affected by this, and it kind of makes the war feel real to him. Not that he needed to cement his anti-British sentiment, but it really does. So Jackson actually keeps traveling with the militia, this is a very famous moment in Jackson's life, something going to define his political career, is that in 1781, Jackson and his other brother, who's still alive, Robert, were actually caught by these British troops moving into the Western Carolinas to try and subdue the population. It was the Battle of Hanging Rock, and a bunch of British dragoons ended up cornering Robert and Andrew and took them as prisoners, because, they were both teenagers at the time, Jackson being, exceptionally young. So while in captivity, a British officer goes to Jackson and says, "Clean my boots," and Jackson refuses. So the British officer slashes, 13, 14-year-old Jackson across the face with a saber.
Jeez.
And he still has that scar. He would have that scar on his face the rest of his life. And then, while imprisoned. It was disgusting. Oh, it was like some of these accounts are horrible. Robert ends up dying of smallpox.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not to make it sadder, but what had happened is that he was suffering from smallpox. His mother, their mother Elizabeth, convinces them to be freed in a prison exchange, and Robert dies like 3 days after he gets home from the Revolutionary War.
I mean, at least he got home.
Yeah.
You can. Yeah. I don't know. That's tough.
And so Jackson's mom, Elizabeth, becomes obsessed with trying to care for all these veterans and all these soldiers because the war's not over yet. So she moves the family to Charleston, and she begins working as a nurse for American prisoners of war. And she contracted cholera and dies shortly after, in November of the same year. So in 2 years, Jackson goes from having 2 brothers and a mother to being orphaned at the age 14.
That's insane.
Yeah, you could.
That's gonna break a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
Can we just take a minute too and just think about how terrifying a 13-year-old like this would be on the battlefield? Like, can you imagine like running into that?
Yeah. This is where you see the myth of Jackson start. Not the myth, but the mythos of Jackson start to form.
Kind of like a Kaiser Soze almost.
Right.
Different as he didn't shoot him himself.
Yeah, right. Like he ends up becoming kind of like, think of it. This is 40 years later, he's going to be running for president. 42 years later, he's running for president. And when you tell these types of stories, forget about his success as a military commander after this. Like, this is a man who is, cut from a different cloth to be able to handle all this.
Right.
But I think there's something that I missed when I first wrote this. What I do with a lot of this writing process, especially for the bigger presidents, I'll write a lot of it and then come back and then rewrite it. And something I missed my first go around on this was he's an orphan at 14.
Right.
In the 1780s. Like,
yeah, right. Wrap your head around that. What? You now are the man of the house. Like, you probably got all the possessions and everything that you got to go now try to learn how to run.
Yeah, but they didn't really have that much possession. He was just kind of a poor kid.
They didn't have a farm or anything he inherited?
No, they were kind of frontier farmers. Hard to work that land as one person. They didn't have slaves.
Right.
Jackson's only one of only 2 presidents to own slaves in their lives, but didn't grow up with slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Him and his protege, Martin Van Buren, are the only 2. There's some presidents that had weren't born with slaves, but their parents bought slaves later and stuff like that. And then you have the thing where Grant was given a slave who he just freed. He was like, "Well, I don't want that." What the hell?
Grant?
But over the Grant had a slave. Like somebody was like, "Oh, you're under hard times. Here's a person," and he was like, "No, thank you. I'm going to free this." Actually,
Jesus,
interesting move by Grant. He didn't say no. He was like, "Yeah, I'll take this human
do you have
being."
any more?
Yeah, and then he was like, "Dude, go." He was like, "Get out of here." Oh, I cannot wait for Grant. Grant is. Oh, now we're going to talk about an actual war hero. So he moves. So he spends a.
Hang on a second. Wait a minute. It sounded like you were discounting his Revolutionary War service, and I don't think you meant to do that. I think you were making a joke about the New Orleans.
Oh, no, I will discount his.
Okay.
I mean, he wasn't instrumental in winning the American Revolution. Like, he's not Monroe. He's not getting shot at the Battle of Trenton. Like, surviving. Like, I'm not. He was a kid helping out some militias. I don't want to bet more badass than I'll ever be in my life. I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying
POW still.
Yeah, like, I'm just saying in the scale of like how important he was to that. There are other wars that he's incredibly. Like, as much as I obviously have made the jokes of the War of 1812 in the past, there's actually a lot of evidence that his movements during the War of 1812, prior to the war ending, put pressure on the Brits to try and, shore up the Louisiana frontier. This is not, I hope this isn't people's most serious foray into history, but this is a little bit of entertainment value here.
Right. Yeah, this better not be your first stop.
Oh, God, no.
Definitely not your last.
What I hope is that you fall down a rabbit hole trying to disprove the antics I say.
Right.
So to kind of, keep walking down Jackson's road. So over the next 7 years, it's going to be fascinating, Jackson's life. So he'll be an attorney by the time he's 20. He'll become an attorney in September of 1887. But so he returns home. He spent a brief time in Charleston after his mother passed away. He works a bunch of odd jobs. He even starts. He even was teaching at a school.
How would you? Don't you have to be educated to teach?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a weird one. I thought that was interesting.
All right.
So after a little after a little while of floating around Charleston, he ends up moving back to Waxhaw, and
Waxon.
Waxon. But kind of cool. He was like, I need to make money, so he takes up horse racing.
What?
Yeah, he just takes up horse racing, and he loved it. He loved the danger of it. He loved getting roughed up.
I never really thought of horse racing as being dangerous, but I guess you
I think it's a quite dangerous sport, actually.
Yeah. I mean, those things are pretty big and they are very heavy, and they like to step on things and kick things.
Yeah, I mean, I would not want to ride a horse. Horses, most farm animals scared me.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of horses. They're too big. I don't trust them.
Too big.
Yeah. And they're too smart.
My wife's grandparents have a ranch, a farm, and
Yeah.
so she's just like flying around cows and horses, and I'm just like,
I don't mind cows. I don't like
cows
horses.
are too big. Too big. I don't like anything bigger than me. Like, they had a beagle that was pretty cool. I was a big fan of the beagle.
It's really awesome as you watch one of those giant cows jump over a 6-foot fence.
Yeah, they can
blow your
move.
mind.
Yeah, they can move. That also scares me even more about
Right.
them. Not so he ends up
Farming with Eric. No.
So he ends up being like, wow, yeah. So like he ends up being like, wow, okay, I think I'm done with horse racing. He decides to pursue a legal career in 1784. So he's only 17 at this point.
Oh, geez, man, it's almost like a Forrest Gump.
Oh yeah. He gets, but it's really, really interesting, Kyle. So there's a lot of different reasons why he could have pursued law, and one in particular was he wanted to advance. He got this like kind of unrelenting attitude to stratify, to climb up, the different social classes of the American frontier at this point. And he saw frontier legal work as a process to get there.
One of the sorry, I don't mean to cut you off again, but one of the impressions that I got out of Jackson was that he did not much care for the class system, but he wanted a meritocracy. It seemed like he was almost like angry that the meritocracy didn't exist for him when he was younger and trying to move his way up.
Yeah. I don't think that's a bad display of Jackson.
I'm not saying it's true, but it seemed like he had a chip on his shoulder, like around.
Oh yeah, he had a chip on his shoulder, but he did want to climb up. He was obsessed with getting land, getting money.
Yeah.
He married Rachel Donaldson.
Another founding father trick is to marry into wealth.
Marry into wealth.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be the founding father trip.
Yeah.
Marry into money so you can think about philosophy. Right? So he ends up actually moving to Salisbury, North Carolina, to apprentice under like some really prominent attorneys. I mean, come on, you got like a 17-year-old who went through everything he did, and he's definitely a veteran, borderline war hero. I mean, you got a guy with a slash across his face. I just get that slash across his face. I refused to wash the shoes of a British officer when I was a POW in the Revolutionary War. You're going to be like, okay, cool. So you want to learn law? All right, let's talk about that.
Did he tend to fight a lot too?
Yes, he was. He was known for. He was known for being a brawler. He was known for wanting to fight and duel. Jackson does completely live up to the aura around him of being this like, I'll duel you, I'll fight you. We're going to talk about he killed somebody in 1806. This gentleman Charles Dickinson. That's because Charles Dickinson like insulted Rachel, and he was like, "Let's go duel." Charles Dickinson shot Andrew Jackson in the chest. Like he did not.
God, really?
Yeah, Andrew Jackson actually lived the rest of his life with a bullet there, but.
See, I do have a little bit of respect for a guy who, if you're going to be a tough guy, you at least got to back it up, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's as much my issues with Jackson. I think a lot of jokes I do with Jackson. I do around
a lot of
Jackson.
it's the ideology for me.
It's the ideology, yeah. I think it's hard not to root for Jackson as a person. Dude, I could totally see myself in the 1820s being like, this guy's the common man. I could see that. Like, so he becomes an attorney in 1787. By 1788, he's a lawyer on the Tennessee frontier. And that's where he gets that reputation of being from Tennessee. He's not. He's from the Carolinas. And his like first thing. So he started as something called a public prosecutor. We'd call that a district attorney today.
Okay.
He actually made a lot of his money enforcing contracts and collecting debts. He was kind of he was a legal leg breaker, I guess you could say.
Oh. Oh, okay.
Uh,
Mafioso ties, almost a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. And this is when he begins to meet the Donaldsons. So while he's out in the western frontier, he ends up rooming with this, there was a pretty prominent settler family, Colonel John Donaldson, and Colonel Donaldson invites Jackson to lodge with them while he's out there, doing his district attorney roles and, enforcing. And there's nothing wrong with enforcing contract law either. Like that's
Yeah.
at the time. I mean, actually, I would argue the enforcement of contract law is one of the most important economic systems we have in the United States. So
I mean,
don't
that's
want that.
pretty much the basis of our entire system of government is just contracts.
Yep. Yeah. And again, like it's going to be hard to root for Jackson. As much as I like to make the jokes about it, I mean, the kind of honest approach of Jackson is he's a complicated man, like all the founding fathers. I'd argue the least complicated was John Quincy Adams. He was very linear, like very linear what he believed. So this is when he first met Rachel Donaldson, and kind of controversial. And this is something that would plague Andrew Jackson the rest of his life, most of his career, is that Donaldson was previously married. She divorced her husband, told Jackson she had divorced her husband. This is the 1790s. Like,
okay. Yeah, that record could have gotten lost.
yeah, but also, like, I gotta guess it's hard for a frontier's woman to divorce her husband in the 1790s. I'm not an attorney.
Guessing, yeah, she might have given him the paperwork, but it probably had to do with him turning it in, right?
Yeah.
Or he probably couldn't have happened without him signing it or doing something, right?
Yeah, anybody who's like a historian or attorney wants to comment on this. Like, I'm going to imagine that even like a wife instigated divorce would have been hard to establish at this time period.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, like,
Yeah, I imagine so.
I'm not making a bold assumption there, right? Like,
no, I think it'd probably be easier to pretend like somebody insulted you and then try to get your husband to duel that guy.
Yeah, I mean, right? So,
is that what happened? That's not what happened, right?
There actually is multiple times when they're living out there that Jackson starts dueling people over this exact issue, because they basically are calling a soon-to-be First Lady Rachel a hussy.
No.
So she filed for divorce in 1791. It wasn't, and they married in 1793. So that's another thing. Like, sometimes it gets lost in historical context that, like, she was married to her husband, left her husband for Andrew Jackson. That's like not what happened at all. The timeline that's really wrong.
So is that a 3-year timeline you just went over?
Yeah, effectively.
Yeah.
So she left her husband in 1791 and then started dating Jackson, a year, several months after that. And then they got married in 1793. That's when they found out that the divorce never went through. So they pushed the divorce through. They do everything legally right once they find out about this. That's an unfair thing that gets leveled at Rachel and by proxy Jackson, is that they were trying to hide this. No, the minute they found out about it, not only did they finalize the divorce, they actually got remarried in 1794 to legitimize the union. So not a fair criticism of bigamy to Miss Rachel there at all. Like,
okay.
But I will tell you that, real true love. Like, they were, every account we can read, that he deeply loved her. There wasn't this, they were super supportive of one another. He wasn't marrying for class. By this time, he started accumulating a fair amount of wealth and starts purchasing his first slaves. And we really, the Hermitage, which is what it would eventually become his plantation, his farm. So he keeps kind of climbing up that social ladder. He's making more money. He's buying more land. He's buying more human beings. And he really starts building this prominency in Tennessee. And, by this time, we're in the 1790s, so he's not at the peak of his popularity, but he starts getting a lot of interest because, he's walking around, he's killing people who are insulting Rachel's honor. He's pretty well-spoken.
Has he started killing Indians yet at this point, or is he...
No, we're going to get there. It's not super fun.
Oh, actually, I think that's the next bullet there.
I was going to say, I think that's the next bullet there. So he ends up being this, he ends up rising politically pretty quick. And what ends up, you end up with the 1790s. He ends up getting a political appointment from this guy, William Blount. He's the governor of the Southwest Territory. he's essentially the governor of modern day Tennessee, plus or minus a little bit more. So in 1796, they draft the Tennessee state constitution. William Blount appoints him to do that, to try and transition the territory from a territory to statehood. And this is huge. This is considered a huge honor. This is where he finally arrives at the top of the political class of Tennessee. And he's there. And he's 29 years old. So he got there pretty fast for a kid who was orphaned at 14. So in 15 years, he went from an orphan with no safety net, nothing, in Charleston, not knowing how he's going to feed himself. To the time he's 29, he's considered one of the most prominent attorneys in the state of Tennessee.
Did he get any sort of like benefits as being like a soldier, or maybe anything like that to help, sustain him a little bit or something? Or is this just all off of his own back?
I couldn't find any record of that. Militia usually weren't considered the same thing as regulars at the time. But he will get that, because he will climb very high up in the Army. And so at age 29, he earns the distinction of becoming Tennessee's first member of the U.S. House of Representatives. So he moves to Philly, because first capital at the time. That's where Congress was convening. Jackson absolutely hates it. Hates it. Just is like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. So he's only a member of the House of Reps for a year. Doesn't seek re-election. And in one of the funniest things, so he leaves the House of Reps in 1797. He's like, I don't want to do this. Not a big Congress guy. Thanks, but no thanks. He's not bitter about this, by the way. I don't want to come. Sometimes people read it off and he's like, oh, I hate you guys. No, he's just like, I don't like being a legislator.
This is annoying. I can't punch anybody.
Right. So naturally, he leaves the House of Reps in 1797. Not really want to be a legislator, just not really into it, and is immediately elected a U.S. senator.
Don't you have to run to be like a senator? I didn't think they could just elect you without running.
No, so direct election of senators was how most states selected senators for the first several decades of America.
Really?
It was in the public.
Huh. That sounds awful.
Yeah, it's weird, because the Senate's supposed to be the liberatory body of the House of Congress. So there's this idea that like they should be selected by other politicians, which gets a little weird.
Yeah.
Like, it's politicians selecting the best politicians, which I don't know how that goes.
Yeah.
But that's kind of funny. I don't want to be here. And then somebody's like, we're going to make you, you were going to make you a more powerful person there.
Maybe if there's fewer people to punch, you won't be so mad.
And so naturally he resigns in 1798.
Did he really? At least he's consistent.
He's good. No, and again, I want to point out that as much as I do the jokes about Jackson, I'm hoping I'm painting this narrative that you can see how people get behind this guy.
Dude, if I didn't know we were talking about Jackson, I'd be all in on this guy.
Yeah.
This sounds like the awesome hero archetype that we're just walking through. This is quite the story arc.
And it's funny because he goes back to Tennessee and people ask him, why did you step down from the Senate? And he said, I was frustrated with the partisan intrigues in national politics. So he's coming back and saying, dude, I just thought I was serving the American people. I'm going up there. There's partisanism. There's national intrigue. I just want to help the people. And that's when that starts getting stoked. That's when that really starts getting stoked. And, so he comes back at 1798 from the Senate. This is how much I like this guy. They're like, we got to figure out, this guy has to stay in government. We got to figure out something for him. So in 1798, he's appointed to this, the Superior Court of Tennessee. And he will serve until 1804. And, throughout these years, throughout his time on the Supreme Court and the Superior Court, he was, doing business, different business ventures. He bought a bunch of land, sold a bunch of land. He bought and ran a general store. And by 1804, he, the Hermitage is, which is just outside Nashville, by the way. I've been there. If anybody's just drop by. It's interesting. So he ends up, coming up all these business ventures. He's very successful, and he's officially, by 1804, he's officially that gentleman planter, and he rises to what he always wanted to be. And, we're starting to move towards the kind of the last phase of his pre-presidential life, which is his military career. And
see, that's funny that he had another one. Most people don't go back to the military in their 30s.
No, right, man, right? Yeah. It's like he's 37, but Jackson always liked the military, and he always liked the idea of the militia. He was a big believer in that. So he's elected, the Tennessee militia, they elect him as the major general of the Tennessee militia in 1802 at age 35. this creates an incredibly loyal base, and they love Jackson, and they don't just love Jackson because of this, mythical figure that he is. They actually love Jackson because of a lot of cool events that happened during that time, and we're gonna get into some of those.
Okay.
So for the next decade, leading up to the War of 1812, he's used by, he drills the militia and he maintains their readiness because he saw the tensions growing with the Brits, with the Native Americans and stuff. So he kept his soldiers well trained during this peacetime, which, Kyle, you know better than anybody else, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, no.
So War of 1812 kicks off, and this is what I was alluding to a little earlier, that as much as I joke about he fought a battle that didn't matter,
right.
Which is a factual statement. The War of 1812 was over. And by the way, I know It's not like Jackson knew the war was over. I'm poking fun at somebody I don't super think that high. I don't say.
Might have had a short that got Eric a little defensive here.
Got a little defensive on this. No, I definitely knew the war was over. We didn't know the war was over, so I'm just.
But we are. I am going to still petition for Lafitte as the part 4 of this season or series.
The what?
John Lafitte, the Pirate King. Yeah. I think the Pirate King of New Orleans, the one who actually saved New Orleans, should be the one that we talk about.
New Orleans, yes, it's awesome. I have like a sheet of I have a Google Doc that's like every time I see somebody I haven't seen before, run it through here. Yeah, I'll be like, I'm gonna type that name out, and yes, the Pirate King of New Orleans is the greatest name of any podcast we'll ever do.
Right.
But his movements on the Western Front did inhibit the British, and the fact that you don't have to fight a battle doesn't mean you should have it taken away from you from how ready you guys were. Basically, he had 2,000 very, very trained. They'd been training for 10 years militia, and Jackson, first off, he was super eager. He offered the services of the Tennessee militia to the federal government, and so the federal government turns around in 1813. It's like, hey, you need to get your troops to New Orleans. And this is 1813, so this isn't the Battle of New Orleans. We're years away from that.
Yeah.
So he leads 2,000 highly trained volunteers towards New Orleans. He gets just outside New Orleans, and he's ordered by the federal government to stop and disband his troops. They don't need them.
Huh.
And Jackson refused to abandon his men. He refused to disband them because they were so far from home. They had marched, think of Tennessee to New Orleans. And the federal government's like, well, that's fine, but we're not going to pay for the troops. Disband them, send them home. He responded by paying all the troops and paying for their expenses as they march back up to Tennessee back home. And as you can guess.
Damn it, man, you're making a really good case for Jackson.
Oh, no, it's hard. And I wanted to be honest during this.
I want to like him.
I didn't want to go, right? I didn't want to go through this, just bashing Jackson. I wasn't going to be like, oh yeah, he's a bigamist. He married a bigamist. Oh, he was a horrible general who fought. No, he was a good military commander.
I'm about to rewrite my entire outro.
A lot of the myth around Jackson is an actual myth. He was a tough SOB. He was he had a hard life. He brought himself up from nothing. Now, did he use all the money he gained to buy other human beings and was incredibly defensive of his right to own other humans? And that's horrific. Yeah, he was. But in the same breath, I'm not going to make up that he didn't come from literally nothing. Started at a negative position in life. And by the time he was 29, he's writing the Constitution for his state. It's just hard for me. I don't want to, slander Jackson. I think being objective about what he did and what he believed is the best way to handle his legacy.
Yes, I agree.
So we have the Battle of New Orleans. We all know about that. We're gonna. I don't want to say we're gonna skip over that, but
no, I think I want to talk more about this one in much more in depth.
Yeah, the Creek War.
The Creek or Cree?
Creek.
Okay, there is a K in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is the Creek Nation.
Okay.
Not the Cree. I forget where the Cree were. I don't think they were in this area of the country. This is something that I've made jokes about Jackson starting a war with the Seminoles and stuff prior. And that's part of the shtick is poking Jackson for, even though Jackson's going to come back and avenge himself by probably killing me in a duel at some point, Ghost of Andrew Jackson. But yeah, so on the southern frontier, there was this, there was something called the Red Stick faction of the Creek Nation, and this is during the War of 1812. They're aligned with the Brits, and they're basically what the Brits were doing is they were like feeding weapons to the Creek Nation, to this faction of the Creek Nation. And then the Creek Nation was going and raiding all these villages on the southern frontier. Now, when I say southern frontier, I'm talking about like Georgia, Mississippi, Spain, like what would be Spanish Florida at this time, so northern Florida. So he goes in there, and at this point, Madison's in office, and Jackson was now a major general of the U.S. Volunteers, and he was commissioned under Madison. So, like, this is Madison's guy. So Madison's like, you have to go down there and stop this. Now, the Brits were basically having this Red Stick faction go in there and attack troops. Like, don't get me wrong, but they were attacking women and children. Like, they were attacking everybody. This was like, think of like sowing chaos among your enemy. That was the job. So Jackson.
So he kind of went and did the same, basically.
Yeah, so Jackson went down in the fall of 1813 and marches down there. There's supply. This is horrible, by the way. This is not the March to New Orleans. There's mutiny. They have no supplies. It's horrible. I mean, the troops were starving half the time.
This is basically a swamp, isn't it?
Yeah, like I don't know if people like, Kyle, you know the area, but like people around the country, I'm sure we have listeners from around there. Like, could you imagine just walking through there with no roads or anything? Like, it's a horrible area. No. You want to fight there at all. So Jackson gets down there. So 1827, we're in there's the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. It's in Alabama, so exactly what you're talking about. Like definitely swamplands is definitely part of that area, but that humid, gross, middle of nowhere area. It is a bloodbath. I mean, it is considered. It's tactically beautiful, but it's an absolute bloodbath. The Red Stick faction suffers 800 KIAs, not casualties, KIAs.
Yeah.
Most historians believe it ended the Creek War, that this was the end of the Creek War. But that battle was so destructive that they just chose to stop fighting. And there was something called the Treaty of Fort Jackson, which was signed in August 1814. Basically, it made the Red Stick faction cede in the Creek, cede about 23 million acres of land to the United States. And this is the first time he starts getting national attention for being a war hero. And it would end with having him commissioned as a major general in the regular U.S. Army. And that happened May 28th, 1814.
Wow. This battle, is this the same one like we're talking about with the Seminoles, like when he was just running around like just murdering women and children, or is this a different?
So this is different. So the first Seminole War, that was in 1817 to 1818. And so after the War of 1812, I know everybody, we skipped over the Battle of New Orleans. We'll
get back to that one. Don't worry.
It's not fair to do that as like a highlight reel of Andrew Jackson's military career. So he remains in the Army. 1817 rolls around, and there's all this tension mounting in Spanish Florida, like I mentioned earlier. He fought this battle in Alabama, but this is the natural progression. About 5 years later, he's down near Spanish Florida. The Seminoles are raiding areas. Fugitive slaves are running into Spanish Florida to seek freedom, and Monroe looks at Jackson and says, "Go down there and stop that." Now, what Monroe meant, just for the record, was go down there and stop the raids.
Yeah.
Go and do that. So the First Seminole War, it's 1818. Major General Jackson, he's down to Florida. There ain't supply issues here. He is a major general of the United States Army.
He can get
well supplied.
Yeah.
He just goes into Pensacola. Just clean as day, goes into Pensacola and captured St. Mark's. Which is a Spanish outpost just outside Pensacola.
The French? Wait, the Spanish, I mean? Like, just
Spanish,
went to Did this start a war?
Yeah, it should have. Yeah, no, it definitely should have. So he goes in there and just captures St. Mark's and then, Pensacola as a whole. And then decides he decides on his own. Monroe didn't tell him to do this. He decides, and again, Monroe, war hero, complete war hero. So he's not anti-fighting people. He decides this is where it gets kind of like, oh, Jackson, what were you doing, dude? Andy, come on, man. He deposed the Spanish governors of of every place you take over. You're just like, you're not governor anymore. And then plant an American flag and claim the territory for the United States. Yeah. He was just like, wait a minute.
It really does feel like Julius Caesar going out and conquering the Gauls.
This feels like when General Patton was told to cover the western flank of Montgomery when they were taking Sicily, and he just went across the entire country on the left side. It was like, I covered your flank, I defeated everybody. But it gets a little better. It gets a little better. By better, I mean horrible.
Oh,
so during the campaign, Jackson's troops are like destroying the Seminole villages, like I mentioned before. But they stumble upon these two people, Alexander Arbuthnot and Robert Ambister, who are British subjects, who are then promptly executed.
Oh, God.
Just that. Full British subjects, like British citizens, not like, they like born something. No, just two Brits. So
not even in America, living in Spain, basically.
Yep.
Wow.
So to check off Jackson's list, he ends up, by the way, that the assassination or the execution of those two Brits becomes international news.
Yeah, I'm surprised that didn't start a war.
It was gonna. It was definitely going to, but our friend Secretary of State John Quincy Adams steps in around this time.
Talk about solving. I didn't realize that Jackson was the one creating all the issues he was solving before his presidency.
A lot of reason why we can say John Quincy Adams is one of the best Secretary of States of all time is putting out the Andrew Jackson fires. So Andrew Jackson's just like causing pet name. Monroe's like, hey, dude, can you not depose governors? What did that come up to? Like, you probably have Monroe being like, I swear I could have read this properly before. Like, somebody drafted this. This is somebody. I have a great cabinet.
Just taking over towns in Spain. What are you doing?
It's like you're reading it. You're like, okay, dude. I didn't like you burning the Seminole villages. I kind of see that happening. Okay. Ooh, you executed two Brits. Were they mercenaries? Were they fighting? You occupied some Spanish outposts, and I mentioned there was nothing Spain written in these orders. Deposing governors, you're overthrowing civil society. Oh no, but don't worry, I claimed the land for the United States. Like, who gave you that authority? What do you mean you're claiming land for us? Like, you're high up, but you're only a major general. You're not even like there's higher generals than you right now. Like, what made you think you have the ability to annex territory? It's not even in your.
It's all part of Tennessee now, not America. Because
but the American people love this because they're hearing all the horrible stuff going on in Florida and in Georgia and stuff, and they're just like, oh, we sent down one dude and he's toppling the governments down there. So this is blowing up. This is going to be an international emergency. Like, this is horrible. So Jackson's just like, sorry, not Jackson. Monroe's like, hey, Adams, can you like stop World War I from starting? Because like everybody's going to come over here and fight us. Like, everybody's going to be angry about this, and the French are going through some crazy stuff over there. Napoleon,
as is tradition.
As is tradition. France is riding. It's like, oh, good. I'd be nervous if they weren't. So Adams is like, yo, Adams comes to his defense. Adams is like, hey, if you weaponize a bunch of people to come, assault Americans and threaten American sovereignty, we have the right to come and threaten your sovereignty. Sorry, we're better at it. Like, that was his argument. He was like, he was basically like, if you could have knocked off the governor of Georgia, you would have done it. Sorry, our dude's just better at war than you. That stinks, but like...
We'll try to get a leash on him, but sorry.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't have provoked us sending Jackson after you. That's on you, man.
Do you want us to send him again? We got boats.
So John Quincy Adams is like wicked defensive of Jackson. He's like, hey, like, whether you like it or not, you started this. This is your fault. Like, we could have lived peacefully. Jackson ends up negotiating something called the Adams-Onis Treaty, and convinces Spain to cede Florida to the United States. Like, he convinced them, like, it's better off for us to have this.
Wrong.
And
better for Spain or better for us?
Better.
Yeah.
And I like this because everybody's yelling at Jackson to stop doing this, but in fairness, he did. If you're an American living in late 18 teens and early 1820s, this treaty was signed 1819, it was ratified 1821, you're like, that guy went down there and just toppled the government of these people assaulting Americans on the frontier.
And just added it to our collection of states.
It's like if Norman Schwarzkopf invaded, like, Mexico, and then we got Mexico
Right,
afterwards.
right.
You'd be like, oh, this guy is... and you're like, okay with imperialism. You'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, this is...
He installed Ron DeSantis as like the governor of Tijuana, and
Yeah, like you'd be like, listen, I may not like the guy, but he's effective, and that's really what it was.
Right.
And so Jackson ends up, he feels vindicated, and he is firmly at this point, become an American hero. He's given the nickname Old Hickory. He's well considered America's most celebrated general, and he comes back. He retires from the army in 1822, and he returns to congressman. Not to sim over his return to political life, but what really happens is he returns home. He's almost immediately elected to the U.S. Senate by Tennessee. Comically, Tennessee
a second time.
Oh, not if you're Tennessee.
Huh.
They merely phrased that he's resuming his position.
Oh, because he took a leave of absence to go lead some armies for 12 years.
Yeah. Oh, no. For about 25 years.
So they only have one senator during that time?
No, they had two senators. They just kind of gave the goofy, like, oh, he didn't resign. Jackson would never resign from duty. He took a break. He took a 25-year.
See, that sounds like a good old boy kind of thing there.
Oh, no, it was. Yeah. Like that whole place liked him. He actually, he shows up to, as we kind of in pre-presidential Jackson, he ends up arriving. He's seen as this like untouchable war hero. He's put on immediately as a junior senator. He's put on, military, two very prominent Senate committees, one's military affairs, one's foreign relations. And, he's a very active senator. He's not lazy. He doesn't rest on his laurels. He wants to get stuff done. But here's where the Jackson presidential seeds get planted. Not only is he high profile, not only is he America's general, seen as his fairest leader, he's kind of seen as the guy willing to push democracy westward at a time with manifest destinies at a fever pitch. And this creates and leads us into, what Jackson would call the corrupt bargain, the election of 1824.
Yeah.
And this is the pedestal that we're going to talk about Jackson's presidency on.
Man, I think that's an excellent spot to put an end to today's episode then. So I had originally written in here that I was going to have to give you some time to get your blood pressure under control, but you really surprised me with how we covered this one. I was not expecting to come away like actually empathizing with the guy and actually kind of liking him up to this point, to be honest with you. Like, that's a story I think a lot of us can get behind. That's a definite underdog story.
He's the underdog of underdogs.
Right.
That's really what he is. And it's, and again, like I always try, Kyle, this, and I hope the listeners know this. I have my opinions about the presidents, especially the early presidents. I want to give the accurate story. Obviously a lot of this is editorialized, don't get me wrong. But I want to give the honest approach. Like, Jackson's these are complicated people. That's what they are. Yep. They're complicated people who have horrible lives, who had horrible lives growing up. And they went on to accomplish, whether or not you agree with their accomplishments, a lot. And I think it's not fair to somebody trying to learn about it to sit there and like bias the story.
Right. All right. Well, I hope you stick around and join us next week as we continue picking apart the stupid policies that defined Andrew Jackson's presidency. Sorry, I wrote that in there from before. While you're waiting for us to get past Mr. Jackson, please let us know what you think of this complicated legacy. Do you think that the life that he lived justifies the man he became? I think that's a good question to ask there. Or if there's anybody you think from that era that could have done a better job, you can drop that in the comments too, or email us at buckstartsherepodcast@gmail.com. You visit the website, buckstartsherepodcast.com, to stay up to date. We'll see you all next week. Produced by China Shop Productions.